Hello and welcome everyone to this very interesting session that we've put together for you today. Uh, yeah, it sounds kind of cliche to say Happy Women's Day, but I think any day is good to celebrate women and to talk about their achievements, their success, their challenges. And today is yet another day, and I have two wonderful women with me. We are going to talk about women as entrepreneurs, as specialists around financial space, and how they've gone through their own journey, what they've learned about money. So, we'll keep it fun and conversational. Do ask us if you have any questions. Introducing my panelists today, I have with me Anusha Bhushan. I'm going to call her Anu. So, Anu, welcome to this discussion. She is the young CEO of Smoodies. It's a wellness beverage brand. I've tried Smoodies myself, and let me tell you guys, it's awesome. She's from Calcutta and also London School of Economics, and she's busy with her entrepreneurial venture these days. I also have with me Anushka Rathod. Hi, Anushka. Welcome to our channel.
Hi,
Anushka is
Preeti.
a Gen Z fintech content creator. I'm sure if you're active on Insta, you've bumped into her at some point. So she's pretty popular, for her innovative approach around topics related to finance. I also saw a very recent reel on taxes. So great, you did that. So yeah, and she has a diverse audience ranging from students or professionals who do architecture, law, fintech, and of course entertainment. So warm welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for taking out time. And yeah, I mean, looking forward to shared learnings and perspectives. I'm going to start with you, Anusha. So help me understand. So you've started up this venture, and it's not easy. It's actually a pretty cool and a popular thing to do, to start up on your own. But I'm sure you face certain barriers as you started out, especially related to finance side of things. So help us understand what these barriers were for you, and how did you sort of surpass them.
Sure. So you're right. I think the initial stage of sort of setting up your own business is it's quite possibly the toughest, especially if you're going into if you're trying to go into an industry where you're actually breaking a barrier in terms of the product itself. Um, I think for me, the largest sort of challenge was I started up very young. I started up when I was around sort of 27, 28. And the first sort of challenge that comes your way is everybody around you telling you that you're too young to do it. And more often than not, the sort of the logic behind that argument is typically saying, why don't you work for a little bit longer, save up a little bit more money, build up your nest egg and then do it. Um, and I think that's not that it's not valid logic, but there are very good reasons to also start up when you're young. But I think that is, I think, and it is one of the largest barriers in terms of decision making, right? Saying when is the right time for me to set up my business. Um, so for me, for example, I think the way I had looked at it was, I was sort of 1.5, 2 years out of business school. I worked for a bit. I worked for a bit before business school, so I had saved up a fair amount at that point, and I worked post for just enough time to actually pay off my student loan. But typically, what happens when people are young and they've also sort of paid for their own education is you have student loans and you're trying to pay them off, and that is an obligation you absolutely cannot postpone. So I think that's the first thing, which is really key. How long can I go without a salary? And effectively, do I have enough savings to be able to tide it over until my business becomes sustainable, or until maybe I'm able to attract investment and actually start paying myself a salary? So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge really is figuring out the answer to that.
Right. Yeah, I think you made a very interesting point around, the taste of salary. Like once you taste that kind of money hitting your account every month, it becomes very difficult to shed that off. And I'm sure it takes like the next level of, thinking and deliberating around making that kind of move. So quite interesting. Anushka, coming to you on this. Like, share with me, what have been your experience. So you're an influencer and you picked up a kind of a very niche topic. I mean, not many influencers talk about taxes or investing or saving. So help me understand, what are the kind of, if you have faced bias talking about personal finance. And I'll give you my story. Like, there's good 2 decades between us, little less than. And there was a point when I was doing my CA and I did my CA, and a lot of people said, "Oh, so who?" Like, I got married, and people asked me this question: "Who between the two of you manages investments and savings?" And it wasn't assumed that I'm capable of doing it for myself or for both of us. So that was like quite amazing to me. And actually, a lot of women took pride in the fact that they don't have to manage their own finances, and they don't have to learn about finance at all. So they took it as a sort of a privilege, or a badge of honor, or something that they were proud of at some point. So, like, help me understand what kind of biases you might have faced. Have people asked you some questions like, why are you doing this, why do you need to know about saving and investing? Like, help us understand.
So I think one very stark difference that I've found between me being a female finance creator and someone who is a male finance creator is that people generally don't accept advice or information around these topics coming from a woman. They'd rather trust a man on this. So that's just like a very obvious thing that people don't really. It's not like digestible for them. Especially people who are a little older, like younger generation is still a little more open to it. Apart from that, I feel that the fact that a lot of creators, like you said, that finance is a completely different niche, and it's a very unique niche. I was one of the first short form content creators in this segment. And when I started, also a lot of people said that a lot of people advised me that why don't you shift to lifestyle, why don't you shift to beauty, you're tall, you can easily pull that off. I said, no, I don't want to do that. That's not something that I enjoy doing. This is something that I really enjoy, and I feel that there is an audience who wants to listen to this and who wants this kind of information. I am pretty sure that this is not something someone who is a male would have heard that. Apart from that, I think in my day to day life also, like since I if today I tell something to my parents, they listen to me. Not my parents, but my family accountant and my dad specifically, they listen to me. um, because people have accepted that I know something. But like just 2 years before, it was very difficult for me to tell my family that this is wrong or this is how you should do. This is how things should have been done. And when you just compare it to something, like it was expected out of my brother to actually be knowing these things and doing these things. But me, when I took interest and I actually made suggestions, I was just cancelled off and written away. So I guess those things are always the gender bias in this field is very, very prominent and still very there today.
Right. I think, yeah, you made a very valid point that, we women have a little bit extra to prove, with respect to our financial acumen. It may be easy to assume that, we like to do pick up those, softer aspects, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously there are women who would love to be a beauty influencer or whatever, but to see a woman as a, a finance or influencer, I think that's an area that is still, and there are very few female influencers in that area. So that's an interesting point you made make. And I think, I'd just like to add to that when I chose this profession, when I decided to become a CA, it was amazing. Like, I think my family truly supported me, and I never faced that kind of bias. But a lot of it came from the outside. It wasn't in my home, and yet it affected me somewhat. Like I was mentioning, there were people who wanted to know what I do with my own money. It's like, am I managing everyone's money? Am I managing my own money? So there's a lot more curiosity around that, and a lot more to prove for us women around that. Interesting. Right. So, coming back to you, Anusha, your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, so my husband is also an entrepreneur, and being with them, and so any entrepreneur you meet, they have an interesting story to tell. So, and I'm not sure how much time we have today, but with you, I would like to understand what are those challenges you faced as a woman entrepreneur, and how you overcame those. And this is not essentially because you are a woman. Partly that. I mean, of course, you may have faced some unique challenges as a woman entrepreneur, but any interesting incidents or ideas you'd like to share on this particular aspect? And, just throw us some challenges that women encounter or you encountered specifically, and ideas around how you overcame those, because we hear enough about challenges, but we don't hear enough about how women go about solving those. Well,
Um, Yeah, I mean, I actually think over the years, the personal challenges of being a woman entrepreneur have bit by bit come down, but that has come from the perspective of having actually established a business and having started scaling. In the first, I think 4 5 months, there are I don't know, like countless incidents that I could tell you about actually, but I can actually tell you about two or three. So being in the food industry specifically, and in manufacturing, I think one of the first pieces of resistance I received from actually pretty much anybody who heard that I wanted to do this was how will you run a manufacturing business, right? You have to handle labor, you have to handle, it's a very physical business, and it is very hard for a woman to do this, and how will you do it? And that was one that it followed me around all the way until we had actually set up a plant, until we had that plant that people could walk into and say, "Ki, this is actually a legitimate um, business." That question followed me around absolutely everywhere I went. The other one, which was I think a little bit more anecdotal, but it was, I think, a little bit testament to the mindset overall, was when I was incorporating the company. Um, so my husband and I basically set up our businesses together. So he runs his own startup, um, and so our incorporation dates are actually one day apart. So the way we had done this was, I took 5% in his business and he took 5% in mine, just to manage sort of two directors on the board. And somebody, I was sitting in front of a notary in his office, and just trying to get some of the documentation done, and he saw the shareholding split, and he said, "Oh, so you're doing this alone?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, it's my business, and it's early days, and I downplayed it, because I think this is what women do. Very often, I think you think big, but you don't pitch big. Um, and uh, and the first piece of advice, unwarranted, unasked for, unsolicited advice, was, don't forget about your family back home. They need you as well. Um, and it sort of took me it it surprised me actually that that's the first thing that somebody would say. But that is, I think, that is something today that I think women in general, when they're setting up businesses, they face that from society overall. If you're doing this, then this is going to take a lot of time away from your other obligations. Um,
yeah,
so those were early days. I think over the years, of course, keeping at it and establishing something is enough proof of concept, right? People see it, and um, people realize that, hey, like, okay, she did it, right? But till you do it, you'll always get questioned. Um, and I think it's a sad reality of it, but it is what it is.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Very, yeah, I think when you look at a successful or a man who's working hard, you don't think about how he's running his family. But when you look at a woman who's successful and is working hard, you always wonder what's happening at home and who's running the show. I
Yeah.
think that's something that we've all faced at some or the other point in our lives. And no matter how much we bring up these conversations, I think the mindsets will take God knows how many years to change and evolve. And like, we'll keep talking about these things. I'm going to come to you, Anushka. So we'll just, like, we've discussed enough about what we've gone through. Now let's pick up some hard questions. uh, when it comes to money management, so traditionally we believe that women are very good with money because they know how to run their household in a sort of a limited budget. And typically women they sort of because they spend a lot more time with children. Traditionally, they do spend more time with children, or they are usually more involved in household expenses. Traditionally, it has been thought that they're adept at managing money. But what are some golden rules of money management that you can give to youngsters like yourself, and many of our listeners who are could be Gen Z or millennials who may have just started their new jobs? What are those some golden rules with respect to managing money that you can hand over to women?
Right. So if you're just beginning as a woman, how would I have approached it? Is that first of all, you need to, like, even Anusha said that there are a lot of responsibilities that you might have to take, and more or less, you can't run away from them. Eventually, they are going to come on you. So you have to accept it from day one that that's how the society functions, and then optimize your finances in a way that they're well suited to that. So first thing is that you might get pregnant or you have some health issues. So for that, ideally, you should start with an emergency fund. And ideally, an emergency fund should be around 6 to 9 months of your monthly expenses. And that is because you might have to, drop out of the workforce for some time or stop working for some time because of these obligations. So first is start with creating an emergency fund for 6 to 9 months minimum. Then after that comes this health insurance. Now it's the earlier you think about health insurance is better because you can start with a lower amount. Like your premiums are way lower when you're younger. So second, start with an health insurance. And some things that we women forget is that our health insurance needs to have a few covers for a specific diseases that we are more prone to, for example, cervical cancer. So we need to ensure that we're getting those specific diseases, the cover for those diseases are more. The When you go to an insurance the company or any agent, they will help you understand that which policies give you a higher cover for those diseases. But ensure you don't take a generic one and you are getting better cover for that. And after that, where is when you should start saving and investing. So now when you're investing, you have to determine what your goals are. Do you have any short term or medium term goals? Do you want to go for your masters? Do you want to get married? So for those goals, anything which is below 3 years, try investing in fixed securities or fixed return securities. Now, how do you essentially plan is that you have to do it backwards. You have to see that this is the amount that I'll need for my education or my marriage, and how much do I need to save today? And all these fixed income, fixed returns securities that are there, how much return are they giving me? And according to that, you have to start saving immediately. And when it comes to long term, uh, take initiative, take responsibility, because a lot of us actually very successful doctors, lawyers, architects hand over their money to their parents or to their brothers or to a guy friend who would take care of that. Don't do that. Try learning a little bit more. Try to automate your investing and your savings. Like a part of your salary goes into a certain mutual fund. Part of it gets saved. Part of it is there for leisure expenses. So try to automate that and then proceed. So that is what, so automation is something that I really tell, regardless of gender, you should do, because we have very busy careers. We have a social life also. So there's not a lot of time that is left for these financial decisions. So try to automate it. You just need 2 to 3 good mutual funds, which give you exposure to, say, tax saving, to say the market exposure, and a little bit depending upon your risk profile as well. So when you're done with that, just quarterly you need to verify that everything is in place, and then and then you can depending upon your goals, keep on making the changes, and depending upon the performance of your portfolio, make changes. So that's exactly how I would plan for if I was just beginning out. And this is like again like a 1 to 2 year thing. It won't happen immediately in a week, so you need to be patient also here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those are some interesting points. So, just to quickly recap, I think you spoke about having an emergency fund, and that could be for scenarios, COVID, or, someone decides to quit their job, or you're looking at starting up and, you want to keep aside some funds to, for the next few months, or 6 months to 12 months. And then of course health insurance. And we are India's number one income tax return filing website, and this year's filings we noticed that health insurance deduction has gone up by 56%. Almost, I mean, actually what I want to say is 56% of return filers had opted to claim health insurance deduction. So in that sense, it's becoming more and more popular. I think there's a lot more awareness around taking up a health insurance, and that's a very strong point you made. Like, if you start early, there are benefits to be had, so that's very important. And also, a lot of people who may be looking at health insurance, this is a good time to go for it, as you can actually avail of health checkups, which may be coming along with your health insurance without any additional expenses. And then you very rightly spoke about setting goals, and thinking about your risk profile, and looking at how you want to begin this journey. And you could take your first few steps by investing in mutual funds, because as you rightly said, whether you're young or old, you don't have enough time on your hands to actually get into stock markets and understand equities. And it's actually even though women are getting into equity investing, it's still kind of slightly a more evolved space. I'm going to come to you, Anusha, on that note. So, so you're an IM pass out, and I'm sure you've you've understood and you've dealt with the basics of finance. But in your entrepreneurial journey, what were how did you learn the ropes of finance? So, so typically as an entrepreneur, you need to learn about fundraising, and allocating equity, and then exits, and figuring out the valuations and all of that. So it's a completely different area as compared to personal finance. So how was that for you? Did that come to you because you did your MBA, or there were a few aspects that you had to learn along the way?
I think the MBA certainly helps with respect to at least understanding the principles behind concepts. So, for example, and these are things that even if you don't have an MBA but you want to start up, there's a lot of material on the internet that helps you figure out what is evaluation, what does it mean, how do I wh- you know how do I go about thinking about investment? Do I need investment, right? So effectively, what kind of business are you looking to run? Are you looking to bootstrap? Are you looking to, what is your path to profitability? Because that is finally the answer to whether you need investment or not. Um, Theoretically, I think there's a lot of information out there. An MBA certainly prepares you for that. Um, but I think, finally doing it and going through the steps, going through the motions of a fundraise, pitching to investors, trying to understand what questions are going to come your way, and are the only real way to learn it is to do it. And I think when you're doing it the first few times, it can be incredibly intimidating, right? Whether that is pitching to an investor, whether it is actually going through the, let's say, the paperwork of a fundraise, or thinking through valuations, right? Figuring out your cap table. Um, the way I had done it, frankly, was ensure that you have a circle of entrepreneurs you can talk to, people who are at least a couple of stages ahead of you, who can just give you perspective on things. um, Over and above, I think one thing that I'd also done was always reach out. For example, if you're talking about fundraising specifically, make your mistakes on somebody you know is not going to invest, for example. That could be a mock pitch, or that could just be somebody who you know is not necessarily interested in the space you're in. But it gives you the practice. Typically, that's the thing. I think the difficult parts of the fundraise process, for example, are actually is the investor part. The rest of it is paperwork. The rest of it is things that your company secretary, your accountant, a lawyer, if you have one, they'll help you with the rest of it, right? But it is the decisions that you as a founder have to make on what are the terms you're giving your business, your investors. So, how much equity ownership are you willing to dilute? What are the implications of that, right? So, if you in your first round, if you dilute too much, for example, what happens in your second? What happens in your third? At what point do you end up giving up more than 50% of your business, which has real implications? Um, those are the tricky ones, which at times you just make mistakes and you correct them as you go along, or you try to. But I think it's most important to, I think, just be very, very plugged into to a community that can actually help you as you start. And it's not gender specific. I think everybody makes mistakes on these, or some people just know how to, they know how to do it right upfront. But I think typically what I've heard and what I've seen is that first time founders usually need some help uh, to to approach it the right way.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah. I can see how, passionately you've spoken about it, and how much, you might have engaged with the idea of, sharing and learning from each other. And I think that holds true for any profession, that, the more you engage with your peers and other folks that you can learn from, there's always something that, that there is to learn and to sort of move up in your career. I think that that's a very important aspect of, sort of increasing your area of influence, or progressing in what you do. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And while we were talking, I just went to Milk Basket and actually selected my meals, and it's going to be Smoodies, and it's going to be with me tomorrow morning. Coming to you, Anushka, and we were talking about, I think Anusha touched upon comfort zones, and one of those things about investing is, leaving your comfort zone, leaving fixed deposits and assured returns and all of that, and stepping into something which is completely different, or it's speculative. And one thing which has caught the eye in that space is cryptocurrencies. We are seeing them everywhere. We are seeing advertisements. We are seeing large, full page advertisements in newspapers and cricket matches and all of that. Do you think women have caught on to crypto investing? We are seeing an uptake, so we are seeing a lot more queries coming in from women who want to understand, or who are curious about what's happening with taxes. So what's your sense of this space? And I'm asking you not only because you're an influencer, but you're a youngster, and is that something that interests the young generation to get into cryptocurrencies?
I guess as someone who's, like since you mentioned a youngster, we generally are a little more risk taking. Like we also have the capabilities to take a little bit more risk. That's why we are more open to investing in cryptocurrencies. Also, I think a lot of us have started, say, in 2020, and we've seen a bull run. So generally, the people have not seen those sharp downturns and those sideway markets for like 3-4 years. So people there also get a little more. Um, they unknowingly also take a little bit more risk there. But yeah, I guess yeah, yeah.
Ignorance is, you can say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess because of those two reasons and also FOMO, a lot of people did get invested or started investing into cryptocurrencies. But I also feel that one more thing that I generally feel amongst younger people is that we are more open to learning about things and accepting that the way the world works can also change. So essentially, today when I invest, or my friends and all, we invest in cryptocurrencies, it's not only because the price will go up or the price will go down, or like Elon Musk tweeted about it. It's also because we see cryptocurrency as an infrastructure. So cryptocurrency basically is a token of a blockchain, and that blockchain is an infrastructure for a new world, for a new technology, how things are going from web 2 to web 3. So we are not only investing in it because we think that the price will go 3x or 4x. We believe in that technology. We ourselves are somewhere be a part of that. So a lot of people today are buying NFTs or being a part of DAOs. I myself, I am a part of a couple of DAOs. One of them is a very women Web3 centric DAO. We see the implications of what are the opportunities, the possibilities in this space, and then
Right.
we're investing. And I guess we are a little more open to seeing these newer startups or newer technology actually perform well than someone who's a little older. I also feel like we're a little bit naive also there, but I guess with time we will learn, with our mistakes we learn how to approach this sector. And when it comes to women, I feel that overall, only when it comes to technology as well as finance, the representation of women is very less. And cryptocurrency is finance plus in technology. So that way, I feel that there's still a very big difference. Like majority of the people who I talk to in this space are mainly men. There'll be like hardly 20 to 30% of people who I communicate with in this space are females. So I feel that the gender divide here is also there. But hopefully, with a lot more communities, a lot more education in this sector, the representation will increase. Because the best thing about cryptocurrency and Web3 is that it's very inclusive. The barrier to entry, especially now, apart from knowledge, is very low. So hopefully, the representation and the inclusion of women from being a part of the community to even in being an investor in this space will increase.
Right. Quite interesting. And I think pretty much, what I've noticed is that a lot of people who get into cryptocurrencies do not truly understand what they're buying. I mean, at least they don't understand what the underlying technology is and what is the basis of that coin, and how, and they don't do enough research. And it's become very, very speculative for some. And of course, there are other people who are true technologists who understand this, the blockchain tech, and the future of Web3 and what all can happen on Web3. And there may be a few learned investors, but largely a lot of people may be betting into this. And as we were discussing, as a youngster, you haven't seen enough to understand that there could be stock market crashes and money getting wiped off and all of that. So if you haven't gone through that, you've not learned a very important lesson in investing. And yeah, like for the older ones, I think we may have every kind of investing in our portfolio, but we would tend to stay away from cryptocurrencies somewhat. So yeah, interesting note on that. And I'm guessing that more and more women, like it should be, as you said, it's all about learning and knowledge. So once that grows, anybody can actually understand this market more deeply and get into it. I'm coming to you, Anusha, now, and share some. And you've already actually shared quite a few tips around starting up, but help me understand. So, as a woman, so I'll give you a backdrop. What happens is that if you're a woman and you're earning, you are financially independent. You no longer have to. Most women, who start earning, once they're married, or they may not be married, they start managing at least their own expenses on they're pretty much on their own. And if you start up, then you may have to depend on either the spouse, or you may have to think around in spending for your own self. You may not have to worry about expenses for the household in that sense, but you may have to worry about how you're going to manage your own expenses. So any ideas and tips that you can share around that, any learnings that you've had with respect to this? I know you spoke about putting aside money and looking at how much, so for you it may have been easier because you had some money before you started up, and you had invest savings put away to pay off your loans. But there may be other women who may not have loans, but who may have to worry about managing their own expenses if they start up and stop receiving a salary.
Um, so I think, so as you rightly said, I think everybody has their own personal obligations that they have to take care of. That could be a loan, or it could be, yeah, it could be a family that is dependent on you. It could be your parents, or it could very well be just the need to have savings with you at all points in time, right? I mean, we all have our different comfort levels, and different levels of risks that we are willing to take with our personal lives. And that is, I think, the first, in a way, before anybody even decides to set up their own business, you have to figure out what is your tolerance level for how much you're willing to disrupt your life. And I say this, for example, I say this to all people thinking of starting up. I also say this to all employees who are thinking of joining an early stage startup. Because typically, I think all startups they take a toll on your life.
Sure.
It could be because you're not able to take a salary, or you're getting paid less. It could just be the toll on your lifestyle, right? How much time you need to put into it. So I think the first thing is, and no man is an island. I don't think anybody here can say that they live completely independently without either emotional support or sometimes financial support from somebody else. That could be somebody in your household, or that could be, just somebody who's part of your life. And I think that's first and foremost. I think when you're starting up is to ensure that you have that support with you, right? So for me, very specifically, uh, I had I was married when when I started out, and my husband and I were basically each other's support, saying, "ठीक है, we're doing this together." In fact, we were a very unique circumstance in the sense that we were both starting up together. Um, but the exercise that we went through was actually something that I recommend anybody starting up would do, which is you build a personal balance sheet. Um, Build a personal balance sheet with your combined assets. If you're willing to combine, of course, that also ends up being it's a personal decision. Um, at what point do you want to stop digging into your savings with respect to putting it into your business? That is a line that you must also establish right at the start, saying, I'm willing to put X number of thousands or lakhs or whatever it is into the business. Anything beyond this, we will either reevaluate or we will make a decision with respect to the business. Because at the end of the day, I think, and it's a very common thing that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, you put so much passion and heart and soul and time and personal capital into the business. If things don't work out, it's very easy to put bad money after good, good money after bad.
Sure.
Or it's very easy to just say, no, I'll just put a little bit more. Or I'll put a little bit more time, just a little bit incremental sacrifice to try to make it work. Um, Sometimes that's the right approach, but at that point, I think typically, if if you're losing that support at home, right, of somebody who is either financially supporting you or who is watching you go through something that is a difficult situation, I think it's a good time to actually step back and evaluate.
Right.
So financially, I think that's what we did. We knew how much we wanted to put into our businesses, and we tracked it month on month on month. We built personal balance sheets
Wow.
to make sure that uh, we weren't going past the point of sort of no return in our heads. And at the same time, you also have to do the same thing for your business.
Sure.
So you the same rigor with which you're monitoring your personal finances, you absolutely must ensure that you're as strict, if not stricter, with the business,
Sure.
because it's all interlinked at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, I think your professional and personal lives are so intertwined. I'm very curious to know, Anusha, what company does your husband, what has he started up?
So he actually runs a technology business in the travel space.
Okay.
So it's called Pathfinder. So actually, it's so interesting, right? Because we've actually been through this twice now. So first, when we first set up, we went through this exercise, and then when the pandemic hit, both of our businesses were very heavily hit, and we had employees and we had investors on board, and there was really no option but to try to make it work. So we actually went back to the balance sheet process again, personal balance sheet, saying how long can you go without taking a salary? How long can the business go without revenues? And it was we went right back to the way we were when we started up and did the exercise again. um, yeah, so I think I really like that process.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting, and I can imagine under the same roof, two entrepreneurs running different businesses. I wonder how that is like.
It's
Yeah,
fun. It's quite fun.
more understanding, isn't it, for each other? Then perhaps there's a lot more understanding of what you do and what you're struggling with.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of empathy. It really helps. I think, especially again, just during stressful periods, it really helps to have somebody, not necessarily understand your business, but at least understand your psyche
Right.
and understand how important it is to make it work.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a very good point you made. Like having empathy for each other and truly knowing what the other person could be going through. Right, Anushka, coming to you now on this. So like sometimes what happens is that uh, as we begin our careers, we may not have the time to invest or the time to spend around investing. Either we are too focused on spending our own money or we are too focused on progressing in our career. What are the tips that you could give to women who have who've started earning and who've spent maybe a year or two down the line, and they've dabbled a little bit in investing, and they could be running like high speed careers, or not having the time to invest. So just one or two tips you feel that could really work for them.
Right. Like Anusha also said, it's very important to know where you're standing, what your expenses are. So essentially budgeting. That's extremely, extremely important. You know what's coming in, you know where you're spending, and you know how much you're saving. That is like the most important thing, that you have to budget. After that, ensure, like I already mentioned, you have an emergency fund, you have health insurance, because in case that we all we saw in 2020, like emergencies don't come announced. So you always need to ensure that if there is a black swan event in your personal life also, you are covered for that. And after that, when you want to invest, then if you are, again, you are someone who's not very interested in the stock market, so ensure that, if you have a long term horizon, you're selecting these two three good mutual funds, an index fund, say a mid cap small cap fund, and say a flexi cap fund, which will give you exposure to the entire market and sort of keeps your risk also hedged. Automate that, and then month on month, ensure that you keep sticking to it. Also, don't get scared. So when you're investing in the stock market, don't get scared of the downturns, or don't get very happy when you're making a lot of returns. Stay neutral. In the longer run, you essentially want to generate, say, a 14 to 15% return on your total portfolio, which is invested into the stock market. Don't get very greedy. Don't try to time the market. So, like, automate it there. Budget, number one. Ensure you have emergency fund and health insurance. And third, take these two three mutual funds and invest into them. And after that, if you have a lot of dependents, probably say, a few years down the line, you can even think of life insurance there. And
Right.
then again, also, if you have, like, if you're young, you obviously want to travel, you want to buy your own car. You can always, plan for those things, and you don't have to compromise on that. So plan for those things, and when you're budgeting, ensure that you're provisioning for that as well, and don't get into a lot of debt.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, those are some very valuable tips. And I'll just share this small incident. I knew this person. She was really young, and she was in her career. Like somebody just advised her to, and she was not at all into investing, and she was actually scared of getting into the market. And she started with just $3,000 of every month. Because she didn't want to spend a lot of money, put away money for mutual funds, and she thought that's the money that she's never going to use, or whatever. I mean, whatever her thinking was. And she started with just $3,000 a month. And for every single month, she did it for, I think, a good 2 years, 2 odd years. And I think that's around like 48, 50,000. And in about 3, 4 years, she was sitting on a lakh. And,
Wow.
yeah, so, and people have had these stories, especially in the last couple of years after the pandemic, and the markets have really picked up. People have had phenomenal returns. But that's the power of compounding, and that's what we also do through our app, which is called Black. Investors who come on Black, they're able to access, a variety of funds that will suit their risk profile, that will suit their investing, where they want to invest and how much, and how often they want to invest. So we do all of that to help people figure this out. Yeah. So, Anushka, coming to you now, I'm also curious about, is it really true that influencers make a lot of money?
um It depends, actually. So the thing with being an influencer is that it's not a stable career. Every influencer has a life of, say, 3 to 5 years, and a lot of what you do is dependent on the algorithm. So, like on Instagram, YouTube, even this video when we put out, it's on the in the hands of algorithm how much it wants to pick it up and how much view it wants to give it to it. So essentially, I can say it's a very high risk, high return game, because at the end of 5 years you're going to get obsolete. So from day one you have to prepare for that if you're doing this full time.
Okay.
So and it's very short lived. Like, no one, most of us, we people tend to get bored of us, and newer faces come in. The algorithm also wants to promote more and more people, otherwise just the few names will be there at the top always. So influencers do earn, I would say, good, but you should also understand that it's very short-lived. It's not as risky as being an actor. That's a completely different thing. But the chance of luck of succeeding, the relevancy of your career is also very less. So I would not say that get into this because of money, because it's very short-lived.
Got it. Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks for sharing that tip because, it's sounds very exciting on the outside, but I can see that a lot of influencers talk about the kind of effort that goes into it. And as you said, there's a life cycle to it. And interestingly, today, all national dailies on the front page, like full page, we had the picture of
Rachna, ma'am.
Rachna. Yeah, she's an influencer on YouTube, and it was amazing. This is there is this person who's talking about the stock market and investing, and she's on the front page on a Google ad. So quite interesting on that. And apparently, she has a team of people who work for her. So is that true for you as well, Anushka? Do you have like, are you employing people? And actually the tagline said, influencers have created so many jobs, and it was quite amazing.
Yeah, so I do have my editors and people who help me with my management aspect and a little bit with research as well. So, as in when you grow and you create content on multiple platforms, it helps to streamline the processes because it's very high frequency thing. You're like doing 10, 12 activations on multiple platforms in a week, and all the content generation has to come from your end. So, that's why, for streamline processes, it's very good to have a team there. So, yeah, we do employ, and Rachna ma'am has a very, very big team. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. This, I think those careers are pretty alien to us as we were growing up. Like, we had to choose very typical careers, and I think that there was no Instagram when I was your age. Amazing. Coming to you, Anusha, like, so like, now that you're doing this startup, and you've come this far, like, I'm sure it has been an exciting journey. Is this something that you recommend to other women? And I'm not asking you because it's Women's Day, but do you think it has been worthwhile for you? Any learnings, any ideas that you can share, that more women who are perhaps listening to this show right now could be motivated to pursue their dreams? Has it been worthwhile? Like, please talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've had a more fulfilling journey than has been sort of my entrepreneurship journey so far. Obviously, it's like a roller coaster, right? There are ups and there are downs, and there are a lot of downs. But I think the joy of owning your own business and working for yourself is it's something. So let me put it this way: I don't ever wake up in the morning and say I don't want to go to work, or I don't want to work, because work is life and life is work, and 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 I think that comes from the fact that it is very much my baby, right? And I'm I'm in a network of sort of a lot of women founders now, and I think that this is one common feeling that resonates across everybody, which is that I think there's no greater passion almost than at least there's no greater professional passion than running your own business. I'd highly recommend it, but I would just I think people need to get into it with their expectations calibrated. It is There are good reasons to do it and there are bad reasons to do it. You should never set up your own business because you want to be your own boss, because there'll always be somebody else who you're actually working for in some shape or form, right? It's
Absolutely.
not
Yeah, there's
investors.
investors, and your board, and yeah, other people that you have to have.
Investors, your board, your employees. I mean, you don't work for your employees, but you work for your employees. At a certain point, you realize, um, you're answerable to a lot of people, um, even if it's not in an official capacity. You're responsible for people, and that's actually what makes it more fulfilling as well. Um, but yes, it's a responsibility that you must think of very carefully before doing it. You hate your boss, don't quit it and say I'm going to set up my own business. Not the right way to go about it. So it is for some, and it some. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. um, but I think it's an opportunity definitely worth exploring. I highly recommend anybody at least think about it and evaluate it. Talk to other entrepreneur friends, see if this is something that would suit. But for example, I have a lot of friends who like the idea of a corporate job, right? Who like the idea of the steady salary. It comes down to mindset as well. You have to be a risk taker to want to roll the dice with your own business. So
Coming from Gujarat and from a Marwadi business background, it's actually that in my society, people who do jobs are looked down upon, and people who actually start up or have a business are celebrated.
yeah,
So, yeah, so that's actually a little different, which I feel depends from society to society. But for us, it's more about like, मतलब इतना risk नहीं ले रहे, धंधा धंधा नहीं करोगे, job ही करते रह जाओगे. It's very interesting to see those differences.
that
Yeah.
is true. But I think there, where the difference also can end up being is the nature of the business that you're running. So typically, so dhanda, like for example, um, a lot of people in the startup space are actually they're not doing dhanda, right? They're building for dhanda 10 years in the future.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so the difference there is like the risk when you're in that startup mentality is it is go big or go home. There is no middle ground. And that's what I typically say. I think traditional businessmen are always thinking through. I want to run my own business, but I want to figure out how it's going to make money next year, uh,
Hmm.
not 5 years later. And I'm going to be my own boss in the sense I'm not going to have investors. It's going to be my business. And that's really how family businesses have grown, right?
Hmm.
You retain ownership because that's the structure of the business that you set up. So, but yeah, I agree. I think the background that I come from is more of a sort of a service working professional sort of background. So for me, like I was breaking barriers in my family when I said I was going to set up, and it was not a celebrated decision. I can tell you that. It was kyun kar rahe ho? Don't do it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I agree. I think I actually have a lot of friends who've grown up seeing their parents run businesses. For them, the it was almost the obvious choice. Like, yeah, I will graduate from college and I will run my own business, or I will join the family business, but I must do something on my own.
Hmm.
So yeah, actually, it comes down to perspectives as well.
Right.
So,
Interesting. And yeah, you spoke about motivation. I think that's very true because, as a CA, I had a very typical career. I started with one of the big four, then I moved on to another American company. And finally, when I joined Cleartax, literally, we were just like a few. I joined them back in 2014, so good 8 years so far. And at that time, we were just a handful of us. But there was so much motivation to come to work every day, and because you knew you're making a difference, and that was a lot different than what we were doing, what I was doing in other organizations that I was part of. Just doing what was asked of me, and meeting my whatever my you know role was, whatever the requirements were. Here, I think there was a lot more motivation to come to work every day and make a difference, and I think that speaks a lot about starting up and motivation. All right, wonderful. I think, yeah, it's almost time, and we've had a very interesting session. At least I enjoyed a lot learning from both of you. So, thank you so much for taking out time and being with us. And have a great day. Have a wonderful year, and hopefully, we'll connect again at some point.
thank you.
Definitely.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot for having us.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.